So now we can see what is GIT and how we are going to make use of GIT in the microservices world. Okay, so GIT is nothing but it is an open source distributed version control system. Okay, it is a distributed version. Okay, so basically it is a there is a remote repository, okay, which is stored in a server, and there can be a local repository which is stored in the computer of each developer. Okay, let's see in detail what does that mean, right? So before diving into what that means, okay, let's see now the traditional repository which we using, right, the SVN. So how that works, right, and why JIT um, takes advantage when compared to the SVN, right? So how SVN works is like it is a centralized repository. It is not a distributed. It is a centralized. Okay, we have one server. Okay, multiple users can take the copy of um, the source code, right, from that particular server. Okay, they can make a change and everyone need to commit back to the server. So there are two drawbacks in this approach. One is what happens in case my repository is down. It is like no one can work, right? Like he cannot check in, he cannot check in, he cannot check in, right? So that is a biggest drawback of having a centralized repository. The other one is, okay, let's say the user one finished, okay, and he check in. Okay, now, okay, when user 3 want to check in, okay, so there should be a conflict, and for user 2 also it's a issue. So there are a lot of issues in terms of the conflicts, right? So these are some of the drawbacks of having the SVN. Okay, so now let's see what is the JIT, how the JIT works, and how it helps us to resolve all these issues, right? So how JIT works is like, okay, so it's a distributor. As we said here, it is a distributor, means, okay, I have one server repository. Okay, so whenever whenever we create a microservice, like, okay, we check in everything into a server repository. Okay, so let's say that I have a team of 3 developers. Okay, what they have to do is they cannot make a change directly in the server repository. Instead they have to take a fork copy of the server repository. We name it as a local repository. Okay, each developers will be creating his own repository. Okay, from that repository, okay, he need to clone and get a copy in his development, in his local machine, and he will be working on that. Okay, so each users will be having his own repository and his own copy, like so he will be having copy of his own repository. Okay, so in case if user 1 is done with all his stories, okay, all his development for all his stories, okay, he will be committing only in his local repositories. Okay, he doesn't care about whether the server is up or not. So in case the server is down, these 3 users are still can continue with their development, and they can still check in. Okay, so uh, so that is how this distributed version control system takes advantage when compared to the centralized repository, where when the centralized repo is done, then all the 3 users are like they are ideal. But in this case, they can still keep working. Okay, that's one of the advantage. The other one is, okay, um so once, like, once I'm done with my stories, okay, I can keep checking my copies in the local repository. Okay, once I'm done with all my stories, once I'm confident that okay, all my changes are done, okay, then I can commit my changes to the server repository. Okay, so so let's say the user 1 finished and he checked in. Okay, for user 2 to check in, okay, he need to make sure, okay, he is having the latest copy of the files, okay, from the server repository in his local repository. In case if it is not latest, then he cannot commit. Okay, he have to take the latest. He have to make sure, you know, he have the latest files, and he overwritten those latest file. His changes are on top of those latest, and then only he can check in. So that is how the JIT is trying to avoid the conflict issues in the server repository. Okay. um, so on top of JIT, okay, there are two terms which we use here, JIT and GitHub. Okay, so JIT is nothing but it is a version control system. It is a tool. Okay, tool which it is a tool we can use to create a fork, commit a file. So it is a tool. Okay, what is GitHub is nothing but it is a cloud. Okay, where we can put all our files. Okay, it is a storage. GitHub is nothing but a storage where we can put all our files. So we put all our files in the GitHub. Using JIT, we can take all those files by fork or by clone, and then we can commit. So all those things we can do using the JIT. So that is the difference between the JIT and GitHub. GitHub is a storage, JIT is a tool. Okay. So in the real-time world, how it works? Okay, first, you have to put all your files in the server repository. Okay, and you need to ask your teammate. The second step is you ask your teammate. The first one is put the files in repo. Okay, second, the teammates need to create a fork of the repo, and then they have to create a clone to copy the files to their local. Okay, once they are done, okay, as I said, they cannot commit directly. Okay, they need to make sure their repo is having the latest from the server repository. Okay, so for that we have to do a couple of things. We have to first stash our change. What a stash will do is, like, it will put all our local changes into some temporary location. Okay, and replace the files which we changed to the previous version. Okay, the version which we got from the local repository. Okay, so that way what we are doing, we are just ignoring our changes. Okay, and going back to the previous version. Okay, once that is done, then you need to pull all the files from the server repository. So the pull will get all the latest file from the server to local. Okay, and then we have to unstash, which means, okay, so now all our changes will override the latest versions. Okay, so we are overriding the latest version with all our changes, and then we have to commit means committing my changes from my local machine to local repository. It is not still reaching the server repository, it is still in my local. I am committing all my changes to the local repository. Okay, and to get it to the server repository, I need to execute a push command. Okay, which will actually go push those changes to the server repository. Okay, generally the project, what they do, they don't allow the developer to directly go and check in the file. So generally it goes to some approver who will review all your changes, and they can merge the files to the server repository. So the last step is review and merge. So they will be merging. Okay, so these are the different steps we have to follow to put the files in the next section. We can see how we can put our microservices, the Spring Boot microservices, into the JIT app. Okay, thank you, bye.